Braveheart is a 1995 American epic historical war drama film directed and produced by Mel Gibson, who portrays Scottish warrior William Wallace in the First War of Scottish Independence against King Edward I of England. The film also stars Sophie Marceau, Patrick McGoohan, Catherine McCormack, and Angus MacFadyen. The story is inspired by Blind Harry's 15th-century epic poem The Acts and Deities of the Illustre and Valiant Campionsker William Wallace and was adapted for the screen by Randall Wallace. Development on the film initially started at Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, MGM, when producer Alan Ladd Jr. picked up the project from Wallace, but when MGM was going through new management, Ladd left the studio and took the project with him. Despite initially declining, Gibson eventually decided to direct the film and to star as Wallace. The film, which was produced by Gibson's Icon Productions and the Ladd Company, was distributed by Paramount Pictures in the United States and Canada and by 20th Century Fox in other countries. Released on May 24, 1995, Braveheart was a critical and commercial success, receiving praise for its battle scenes, production design, musical score, and acting performances, though it received some criticism for its historical inaccuracies. The film also garnered numerous awards including the Academy Award for Best Picture. A legacy sequel, Robert the Bruce, was released in 2019. Plot: in 1280, Edward I of England, known as Longshanks, conquers Scotland following the death of the Scots king, who left no heir. Young William Wallace witnesses the aftermath of Longshanks' execution of several Scottish nobles, then loses his father and brother when they resist the English. He leaves home to be raised by his uncle, Argyll. Years later, Longshanks grants his nobleman land and privileges in Scotland, including Jus Primi Noctis, while his son marries French Princess Isabel. Meanwhile, a grown Wallace returns home and secretly marries his childhood friend Murren mac Clannaugh. Soon after, Wallace rescues Murren from a soldier, but Murren is subsequently captured and executed. In retribution, Wallace and the locals overthrow the garrison, beginning a rebellion that soon spreads. Longshanks orders his son to stop Wallace while he campaigns in France. Wallace defeats an army sent by the prince at Stirling, then invades England by sacking York. He also meets Robert the Bruce, a contender for the Scottish crown. After returning to England, Longshanks sends Isabel to negotiate with Wallace as a distraction from the movement of Longshanks' forces. Meeting Wallace, Isabel becomes enamored with him and warns him of Longshanks' plans. Wallace faces Longshanks at Falkirk. During the battle, nobles Mornay and Lachlan withdraw, having been bribed by Longshanks, resulting in Wallace's army being overwhelmed. Wallace also discovers Robert the Bruce had joined Longshanks. After helping Wallace escape, Robert vows to not be on the wrong side again. Wallace kills Mornay and Lachlan for their betrayal and foils an assassination plot with Isabel's help. Wallace and Isabel spend the following night together, while Longshanks' health declines. At a meeting in Edinburgh, Wallace is captured. Realizing his father's role in Wallace's betrayal, Robert disowns his father. In England, Wallace is condemned to execution. After a final meeting with Wallace, Isabel tells Longshanks, who can no longer speak, that his bloodline will end upon his death as she is pregnant with Wallace's child and will ensure that Longshanks' son spends as short a time as possible as monarch. At his execution, Wallace refuses to submit, even while being disemboweled. The magistrate encourages Wallace to seek mercy and be granted a quick death. Wallace instead shouts, "Freedom," while Longshanks dies. Before being beheaded, Wallace sees a vision of Murren in the crowd. In 1314, Robert, now Scotland's king, faces the English at Bannockburn, and implores his men to fight with him as they did with Wallace. After Wallace's sword is thrown to land point down in the ground, Robert leads the Scots to a final victory. Cast: Mel Gibson as William Wallace, a Scottish warrior who launched a rebellion against the English forces. Sophie Marceau as Princess Isabel, crowned Princess of France and wife to Prince Edward. Patrick McGoohan as King Longshanks, King Edward I, aging and ruthless King of England. Catherine McCormack as Murren Mac Clannaugh, Wallace's childhood friend whom he married in secret. Angus MacFadyen as Robert the Bruce, a Scottish nobleman who is the contender for the Scottish crown. Brendan Gleeson as Hamish, Wallace's childhood friend. David O'Hara as Stephen, an Irish Highlander who joins the rebellion. Ian Bannon as the leper, Robert the Bruce's aging father. James Cosmo as Campbell, Hamish's father and a veteran warrior. Brian Cox as Argyle Wallace, Wallace's uncle. Peter Hanley as Prince Edward, Longshank's only son who is shown to be a weakling. Alan Armstrong as Mornay, a Scottish noble and cavalry commander. John Murtaugh as Lachlan, a Scottish noble and cavalry commander. Sean McGinley as Father Mac Clannaugh, Murren's father and the village end-bomber who joined Wallace's rebellion. Gerda Stevenson as Mother Mac Clannaugh, Murren's mother. Stephen Billington as Philip, Prince Edward's advisor. John Kavanagh as Craig, Robert the Bruce's advisor. Tommy Flanagan as Morrison, a Scotsman who joined Wallace's rebellion after his wife was subject to jus primi noctis. Rupert Van Sittert as Lord Bottoms, a nobleman and overseer of Wallace's home village. Tam White as MacGregor, a clan leader who rallied his clan to join Wallace's rebellion. Michael Byrne as Smythe, a sadistic English officer stationed in Wallace's home village. Martin Murphy as Lord Talmadge, the English commanding officer during the Battle of Stirling Bridge based on John de Warrenay. Gerard McSorley as Cheltham, Talmadge's second-in-command based on Sir Hugh de Cressingham. Richard Leaf as Governor of York. Bernard Horsfall as Balliol, a Scottish noble vying for the Scottish crown. Jimmy Chisholm as Faudatron, an English assassin who infiltrated Wallace's camp. Jean Marine as Nicolette, Isabella's handmaiden. Sean Lawler as Malcolm Wallace, William's father who was killed by the English when he was a child. Sandy Nelson as John Wallace, William's older brother who was killed by the English when he was a child. Production. Development. Producer Alan Ladd Jr. initially had the project at MGM Path Communications when he picked up the script from Randall Wallace. When Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, MGM, was going through new management in 1993, Ladd left the studio and took some of its top properties, including Braveheart. Mel Gibson came across the script and even though he liked it, he initially passed on it. However, the thought of it kept coming back to him, and he ultimately decided to take on the project. Terry Gilliam was offered to direct the film, but he declined. Gibson was initially interested in directing only and considered Brad Pitt in the role of Sir William Wallace, but later reluctantly agreed to play Wallace as well. He also considered Jason Patric for the role. Sean Connery was approached to play King Edward, but he declined due to other commitments. Gibson said that Connery's pronunciation of goulash helped him for the Scottish accent for the film. 8. Gibson and his production company, Icon Productions, had difficulty raising enough money for the film. Warner Brothers was willing to fund the project on the condition that Gibson sign for another Lethal Weapon sequel, which he refused. Gibson eventually gained enough financing for the film, with Paramount Pictures financing a third of the budget in exchange for North American distribution rights to the film, and 20th Century Fox putting up the other two-thirds in exchange for foreign distribution rights. 9-5. Filming. Gibson, right, on set with 20th Century Fox executive Scott Neeson. Filming was initially due to take place fully in the United Kingdom, but most of the shoot was moved to Ireland at late notice after lobbying from the Irish government and their offer to supply 1,600 members of the Irish Army Reserve as extras. Shooting was planned to take 12 weeks on location in Ireland and at Ardmore Studios, plus 5 weeks on location in Scotland. Principal photography on the film took place between June 6, 1994, and October 28, 1994. 11 To lower costs, Gibson had the same extras portray both armies. The reservists had been given permission to grow beards and swap their military uniforms for medieval garb. 12 The film was shot in the anamorphic format with Panavision C and E series lenses. 13. Gibson also later said that while filming a battle scene a horse nearly killed him, but his stunt double was able to save him as the horse fell. 14. Gibson had to tone down the film's battle scenes to avoid an NC-17 rating from the MPAA. The final version was rated R for brutal medieval warfare. 15. Gibson and editor Steven Rosenblum initially had a film at 195 minutes, but Sherry Lansing, who was the head of Paramount at the time, requested Gibson and Rosenblum to cut the film down to 177 minutes. 16. According to Gibson in a 2016 interview with Collider, there is a 4-hour version of the film, and he expressed interest in reassembling it if both Paramount and Fox were interested. 17. Soundtrack. Main article, Braveheart, soundtrack. The score was composed and conducted by James Horner and performed by the London Symphony Orchestra. It is Horner's second of 3 collaborations with Mel Gibson as director. The score has gone on to be one of the most commercially successful soundtracks of all time. It received considerable acclaim from film critics and audiences and was nominated for a number of awards, including the Academy Award, Saturn Award, BAFTA Award, and Golden Globe Award. Release. Braveheart premiered at the Seattle International Film Festival on May 18, 1995, and received its wide release in U.S. cinemas 6 days later. 1819. Home media. Braveheart was released on Laserdisc in both pan and scan and widescreen on March 12, 1996. That same day, it also was made available on VHS in pan and scan only and was reissued in widescreen on August 27. The film was released on DVD on August 29, 2000. This edition included the film only in widescreen, a commentary track by Gibson, a behind-the-scenes featurette, along the trailers. 20. It was released on Blu-ray as part of the Paramount Sapphire series on September 1, 2009. It included the DVD features along with new bonus material. 21. It was released on 4K UHD Blu-ray as part of the 4K upgrade of the Paramount Sapphire series on May 15, 2018. 21. Reception. Box office. Braveheart grossed $75.5 million in the United States and Canada and $133.5 million in other territories, for a worldwide total of $209.0 million, against a budget of $53.72 million. 2210. It spent 9 non-consecutive weeks in the top 10 at the U.S. box office its first 7 weeks, then 2 more weeks during its 5th month in theaters. 23. Critical response. On the review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes, 76% of 132 critics' reviews are positive, with an average rating of 7.2/10. The website's consensus reads, "Distractingly violent and historically dodgy, Mel Gibson's Braveheart justifies its epic length by delivering enough sweeping action, drama, and romance to match its ambition." 24. Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, assigned the film a score of 68 out of 100, based on 20 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. 25. Gibson's work on Braveheart earned him the Academy Award for Best Director. Karen James of the New York Times praised the film, calling it one of the most spectacular entertainments in years. 26. Roger Ebert gave the film 3.5 out of 4 stars, calling it an action epic with the spirit of the Hollywood swordplay classics and the grungy ferocity of the Road Warrior. 27. In a positive review, Gene Siskel wrote that in addition to staging battle scenes well, Gibson also manages to recreate the filth and mood of 700 years ago. 28. Peter Travers of Rolling Stone felt that though the film dawdles a bit with the shimmery, dappled love stuff involving Wallace with a Scottish peasant and a French princess, the action will pin you to your seat. 29. The depiction of the Battle of Stirling was listed by CNN as one of the best battles in cinema history. 30. Not all reviews were positive. Richard Schickel of Time magazine argued that everybody knows that a non-blubbering clause is standard in all movie stars' contracts. Too bad there isn't one banning self-indulgence when they direct. 31 Peter Stack of the San Francisco Chronicle felt at times the film seems an obsessive ode to Mel Gibson machismo. 32 In a 2005 poll by British film magazine Empire, Braveheart was number 1 on their list of the top 10 worst pictures to win Best Picture Oscar. 33 Empire readers had previously voted Braveheart the best film of 1995. 34. Alex von Tunzelmann of The Guardian gave the film a grade of C, saying, seemingly intended as a piece of anti-English propaganda, Braveheart offers an even greater insult to Scotland by making a total pig's ear of its heritage. Historians from England will say I am a liar, intones the voiceover, but history is written by those who have hanged heroes. Well, that's me told, but, regardless of whether you read English or Scottish historians on the matter, Braveheart still serves up a great big steaming haggis of lies. 35 In a 2012 article, Nathan Kamal called the film hugely overrated, criticizing the characters as one-dimensional. 36. Effect on tourism. The European premiere was on September 3, 1995, in Stirling. 37. In 1996, the year after the film was released, the annual 3-day Braveheart conference at Stirling Castle attracted fans of Braveheart, increasing the conference's attendance to 167,000 from 66,000 in the previous year. 38 In the following year, research on visitors to the Stirling area indicated that 55% of the visitors had seen Braveheart. Of visitors from outside Scotland, 15% of those who saw Braveheart said it influenced their decision to visit the country. Of all visitors who saw Braveheart, 39% said the film influenced in part their decision to visit Stirling, and 19% said the film was one of the main reasons for their visit. 39 In the same year, a tourism report said that the Braveheart effect earned Scotland £7 million to £15 million in tourist revenue, and the report led to various national organisations encouraging international film productions to take place in Scotland. 40. The film generated huge interest in Scotland and in Scottish history, not only around the world, but also in Scotland itself. Citation needed at a Braveheart convention in 1997, held in Stirling the day after the Scottish devolution vote and attended by 200 delegates from around the world. Braveheart author Randall Wallace, Srs Wallace of the Wallace clan, Scottish historian David Ross and Blythen Fitzgerald from Ireland gave lectures on various aspects of the film. Citation needed several of the actors also attended including James Robinson, young William, Andrew Weir, young Hamish, Julie Austen, the young bride, and Mhairi Calvi, young Murren. Citation needed. Awards and honors. Braveheart was nominated for many awards during the 1995 awards season, though it was not viewed by many who, as a major competitor to films such as Apollo 13, Il Postino, The Postman, Leaving Las Vegas, Sense and Sensibility, and The Usual Suspects. 41 It wasn't until after the film won the Golden Globe Award for Best Director at the 53rd Golden Globe Awards that it was viewed as a serious Oscar contender. 41. When the nominations were announced for the 68th Academy Awards, Braveheart received 10 Academy Award nominations, and a month later, won 5 including Best Picture, Best Director for Gibson, Best Cinematography, Best Sound Effects Editing, and Best Makeup. 42 Braveheart became the 9th film to win Best Picture with no acting nominations and is one of only 4 films to win Best Picture without being nominated for the Screen Actors Guild Award for Outstanding Performance by a Cast in a Motion Picture, the others being The Shape of Water in 2017, Green Book in 2018, and Nomadland in 2020. 43 44 45. The film also won the Writers Guild of America Award for Best Original Screenplay. 46 In 2010, the Independent Film and Television Alliance selected the film as one of the 30 most significant independent films of the last 30 years. 47. Award Category Recipient, S. Result. 2020's Awards Best Cinematography John Toll nominated. Best Costume Design Charles Node nominated. Best Makeup Peter Frampton, Paul Pattison, and Lois Burwell won. Best Original Score James Horner nominated. Best Sound nominated. Academy Awards Best Picture Mel Gibson, Bruce Davey, and Alan Ladd Jr. won. Best Director Mel Gibson won. Best Screenplay Written Directly for the Screen Randall Wallace nominated. Best Cinematography John Toll won. Best Costume Design Charles Node nominated. Best Film Editing Stephen Rosenblum nominated. Best Makeup Peter Frampton, Paul Patterson, and Lois Burwell won. Best Original Dramatic Score James Horner nominated. Best Sound Andy Nelson, Scott Millen, Anna Behomer, and Brian Simmons nominated. Best Sound Effects Editing Lon Bender and Per Hallberg won. American Cinema Editors Awards Best Edited Feature Film Stephen Rosenblum won. American Cinema Foundation Awards Feature Film won. American Society of Cinematographers Awards Outstanding Achievement in Cinematography in Theatrical Releases John Toll won. Awards Circuit Community Awards Best Director Mel Gibson nominated. Best Original Screenplay Randall Wallace nominated. Best Art Direction Thomas E. Sanders and Peter Howitt won. Best Cinematography John Toll nominated. Best Costume Design Charles Node won. Best Film Editing Stephen Rosenblum nominated. Best Makeup and Hairstyling Peter Frampton, Paul Patterson, and Lois Burwell won. Best Original Score James Horner won. Best Sound nominated. Best Stunt Ensemble won. British Academy Film Awards Best Direction Mel Gibson nominated. Best Cinematography John Toll won. Best Costume Design Charles Node won. Best Film Music James Horner nominated. Best Makeup Peter Frampton, Paul Patterson, and Lois Burwell nominated. Best Production Design Thomas E. Sanders nominated. Best Sound Andy Nelson, Scott Millen, Anna Behomer, and Brian Simmons won. Camera Image Golden Frog John Toll nominated. Cinema Audio Society Awards Outstanding Achievement in Sound Mixing for Motion Pictures Andy Nelson, Scott Millen, Anna Behomer, and Brian Simmons nominated. Cinema Writers Circle Awards Best Foreign Film Mel Gibson won a. Critics' Choice Awards Best Director won. Dallas-Fort Worth Film Critics Association Awards Best Picture nominated. Best Cinematography John Toll won. Directors Guild of America Awards Outstanding Directorial Achievement in Motion Pictures Mel Gibson nominated. Empire Awards Best Film won. Flay-Anno Prizes Best Foreign Actress Catherine McCormack won. Golden Globe Awards Best Motion Picture Drama nominated. Best Director Motion Picture Mel Gibson won. Best Screenplay Motion Picture Randall Wallace nominated. Best Original Score Motion Picture James Horner nominated. Golden Reel Awards Best Sound Editing Dialogue Mark Lapointe won. Best Sound Editing Sound Effects Lon Bender and Per Hallberg won b. International Film Music Critics Association Awards Best Archival Release of an Existing Score Re-Release or Re-Recording James Horner, Dan Goldwasser, Mike Mates-Sino, Jim Titus and Jeff Bond nominated. Jupiter Awards Best International Director Mel Gibson won. Movie Guide Awards Best Movie for Mature Audiences won. MTV Movie Awards Best Movie nominated. Best Male Performance Mel Gibson nominated. Most Desirable Male nominated. Best Action Sequence Battle of Sterling nominated. National Board of Review Awards Top 10 Films 9th place. Special Filmmaking Achievement Mel Gibson won. Publicists Guild of America Awards Motion Picture won. Saturn Awards Best Action/Adventure Film nominated. Best Costume Design Charles Node nominated. Best Music James Horner nominated. Southeastern Film Critics Association Awards Best Picture 2nd place. Turkish Film Critics Association Awards Best Foreign Film 3rd place. Writers Guild of America Awards Best Screenplay Written Directly for the Screenplay Randall Wallace won. American Film Institute lists AFI's 100 Years. 100 Thrills number 91. AFI's 100 Years, 100 Cheers number 62. Cultural Effects and Accusations of Anglophobia. Lynn Anderson, author of Braveheart, From Hollywood to Holyrood, credits the film with playing a significant role in affecting the Scottish political landscape in the mid to late 1990s. 48 Peter Jackson cited Braveheart as an influence in making the Lord of the Rings film trilogy. 49 However, noted medieval historian Robert Bartlett was certain that the portrayal of the English who appear in the film does indeed support the view that Braveheart is Anglophobic. 50. Sections of the English media accused the film of harboring anti-English sentiment. The Economist called it xenophobic. 51 and John Sutherland, writing in The Guardian, stated that Braveheart gave full rein to a toxic Anglophobia. 52, 53, 54 In The Times, Colin MacArthur said the political effects are truly pernicious. It's a xenophobic film. 53 Ian Burrell of The Independent has said, the Braveheart phenomenon, a Hollywood-inspired rise in Scottish nationalism, has been linked to a rise in anti-English prejudice. 55. Wallace Monument. Tom Church's controversial statue of Gibson as Wallace. In 1997, a 12-foot, 3.7 m, 13-ton, 13-long-ton, 14-short-ton, sandstone statue depicting Mel Gibson as William Wallace in Braveheart was placed in the car park of the Wallace Monument near Stirling, Scotland. The statue, which was the work of Tom Church, a monumental mason from Brechin 56, included the word Braveheart on Wallace's shield. The installation became the cause of much controversy. One local resident stated that it was wrong to desecrate the main memorial to Wallace with a lump of crap. 57. In 1998, someone wielding a hammer vandalized the statue's face. After repairs were made, the statue was encased in a cage every night to prevent further vandalism. This only incited more calls for the statue to be removed, as it then appeared that the Gibson/Wallace figure was imprisoned. The statue was described as among the most loathed pieces of public art in Scotland. 58 In 2008, the statue was returned to its sculptor to make room for a new visitor centre being built at the foot of the Wallace Monument. 59. Historical inaccuracy. Randall Wallace, who wrote the screenplay, has acknowledged Blind Harry's 15th-century epic poem The Acts and Deeds of Sir William Wallace, Knight of Elderslie, as a major inspiration for the film. 60 In defending his script, Randall Wallace has said, "Is Blind Harry true? I don't know. I know that it spoke to my heart, and that's what matters to me, that it spoke to my heart." 60 Blind Harry's poem is not regarded as historically accurate, and although some incidents in the film that are not historically accurate are taken from Blind Harry, e.g. the hanging of Scottish nobles at the start, 61 there are large parts that are based neither on history nor Blind Harry, e.g. Wallace's affair with Princess Isabella. 62 The reign of King Edward I of England is one of the most well documented by contemporary chroniclers in the Middle Ages, but these sources were entirely ignored by the screenwriter in favor of the non-contemporary source written more than 2 centuries after the events it pretends to portray. Elizabeth Ewan describes Braveheart as a film that almost totally sacrifices historical accuracy for epic adventure. 63 It has been described as one of the most historically inaccurate modern films. 62-64 Sharon Crossan noted that the film contains numerous historical inaccuracies, beginning with the wearing of belted plaid, Field Lane, which was not introduced until the 16th century 65 by Wallace and his men. In that period no Scots wore belted plaids, let alone kilts of any kind. Moreover, when Highlanders finally did begin wearing the belted plaid, it was not in the rather bizarre style depicted in the film. She compares the inaccuracy to a film about colonial America showing the colonial men wearing 20th century business suits, but with the jackets worn back to front instead of the right way around. 66 In a previous essay about the film, she wrote, "The events aren't accurate, the dates aren't accurate, the characters aren't accurate, the names aren't accurate, the clothes aren't accurate. In short, just about nothing is accurate." 67 Peter Trequair has referred to Wallace's farcical representation as a wild and hairy Highlander painted with woad, 1,000 years too late, running amok in a tartan kilt, 500 years too early. 68 Caroline White of The Times described the film as being made up of a litany of fibs. 69 Irish historian Sean Duffy remarked that the Battle of Stirling Bridge could have done with a bridge. 70 In 2009, the film was second on a list of most historically inaccurate movies in the Times. 62 in the humorous non-fictional historiography and utterly impartial history of Britain, 2007, author John O'Farrell claims that Braveheart could not have been more historically inaccurate, even if a plasticine dog had been inserted in the film and the title changed to William Wallace and Gromit. 71. In the DVD audio commentary of Braveheart, Mel Gibson acknowledged the historical inaccuracies but defended his choices as director, noting that the way events were portrayed in the film was much more cinematically compelling than the historical fact or conventional mythos. 62. Jus primi noctis. Edward Longshanks is shown invoking Jus primi noctis in the film, allowing the lord of a medieval estate to take the virginity of his serfs' maiden daughters on their wedding nights. Critical medieval scholarship regards this supposed right as a myth. The simple reason why we are dealing with a myth here rests in the surprising fact that practically all writers who make any such claims have never been able or willing to cite any trustworthy source, if they have any. 72-73. Occupation and independence. The film suggests Scotland had been under English occupation for some time, at least during Wallace's childhood, and in the run-up to the Battle of Falkirk Wallace says to the younger Bruce, "We'll have what none of us have ever had before, a country of our own." In fact, Scotland had been invaded by England only the year before Wallace's rebellion. Before the death of King Alexander III it had been a fully separate kingdom. 74. Scriptwriter Randall Wallace puts the words "100 years of theft, rape, and murder" into the mouth of William Wallace, which entirely misunderstands the relationship between England and Scotland in the 13th century. The sister of King Edward I of England, Margaret of England, was married to Alexander III of Scotland. They had been married at York Minster in 1251 amidst friendly relations between the two royal families. As Robert Bartlett wrote, in fact, in the 100 years before 1297, the year of that Battle of Dunbar, the King of England had led an army into Scotland only once, for 10 days in January 1216. 75. Portrayal of William Wallace. As John Shelton Lawrence and Robert Jewett writes, because William Wallace is one of Scotland's most important national heroes and because he lived in the very distant past, much that is believed about him is probably the stuff of legend. But there is a factual strand that historians agree to, summarized from Scots scholar Matt Ewart. Wallace was born into the gentry of Scotland. His father lived until he was 18, his mother until his 24th year. He killed the sheriff of Lanark when he was 27, apparently after the murder of his wife. He led a group of commoners against the English in a very successful battle at Stirling in 1297, temporarily receiving appointment as guardian. Wallace's reputation as a military leader was ruined in the same year of 1297, leading to his resignation as guardian. He spent several years of exile in France before being captured by the English at Glasgow, this resulting in his trial for treason and his cruel execution. 76. A.E. Krista Kanitz writes about the historical William Wallace further. He was a younger son of the Scottish gentry, usually accompanied by his own chaplain, well educated, and eventually, having been appointed guardian of the Kingdom of Scotland, engaged in diplomatic correspondence with the Hanseatic cities of Lubeck and Hamburg. She finds that in Braveheart, any hint of his descent from the lowland gentry, i.e., the lesser nobility, is erased, and he is presented as an economically and politically marginalized Highlander and a farmer, as one with the common peasant, and with a strong spiritual connection to the land which he is destined to liberate. 77. Colin MacArthur writes that Braveheart constructs Wallace as a kind of modern, nationalist guerrilla leader in a period half a millennium before the appearance of nationalism on the historical stage as a concept under which disparate classes and interests might be mobilized within a nation-state. Writing about Braveheart's omissions of verified historical facts, MacArthur notes that Wallace made overtures to Edward I seeking less severe treatment after his defeat at Falkirk, as well as the well-documented fact of Wallace's having resorted to conscription and his willingness to hang those who refused to serve. 78 Kainitz posits that depicting such lack of class solidarity as the conscriptions and related hangings would contaminate the movie's image of Wallace as the morally irreproachable primus inter pares among his peasant fighters. 77. Portrayal of Isabella of France. Isabella of France is shown spending a night with Wallace after the Battle of Falkirk. She later tells Edward I she is pregnant with Wallace's child, implied to be Edward III. In reality, Isabella was a child and living in France at the time of the Battle of Falkirk, was not married to Edward II until he was already king, and Edward III was born 7 years after Wallace's execution in 1305. 79-62 The breakdown of the couple's relationship over his liaisons, and the menacing suggestion to a dying Longshanks that she would overthrow and destroy Edward II mirror and foreshadow actual facts, although not until 1326, over 20 years after Wallace's death. Isabella and her lover Roger Mortimer would depose and later allegedly murder Edward II. 80. Portrayal of Robert the Bruce. Robert the Bruce did change sides between the Scots loyalists and the English more than once in the earlier stages of the Wars of Scottish Independence, but he probably did not fight on the English side at the Battle of Falkirk, although this claim does appear in a few medieval sources. 81 Later, the Battle of Bannockburn was not a spontaneous battle. Soon after Wallace's execution, he had already been fighting a guerrilla campaign against the English for 8 years. 82 His title before becoming king was Earl of Carrick, not Earl of Bruce. 83-84 Bruce's father is portrayed as an infirm leper, although it was Bruce himself who allegedly suffered from leprosy in later life. The actual Bruce's machinations around Wallace, rather than the meek idealist in the film, suggests the father-son relationship represent different aspects of the historical Bruce's character. 85-86 In the film, Bruce's father betrays Wallace to his son's disgust, calling it the price of his son's crown, when in real life Wallace was betrayed by the nobleman John de Menteith. 87. Portrayal of Longshanks and Prince Edward. The actual Edward I was ruthless and temperamental, but the film exaggerates his negative aspects for effect. Edward enjoyed poetry and harp music, was a devoted and loving husband to his wife Eleanor of Castile, and as a religious man, he gave generously to charity. The film scene where he scoffs cynically at Isabella for distributing gold to the poor after Wallace refuses it as a bribe would have been unlikely. Furthermore, Edward died almost 2 years after Wallace's execution, not on the same day. 88. The depiction of the future Edward II as an effeminate homosexual drew accusations of homophobia against Gibson. We cut a scene out, unfortunately, where you really got to know that character Edward II and to understand his plight and his pain. But it just stopped the film in the first act so much that you thought, when's this story going to start? 89. Gibson defended his depiction of Prince Edward as weak and ineffectual, saying, "I'm just trying to respond to history." You can cite other examples. Alexander the Great, for example, who conquered the entire world, was also a homosexual. But this story isn't about Alexander the Great. It's about Edward II. 90. In response to Longshanks's murder of the prince's lover, Philip, Gibson replied, "The fact that King Edward throws this character out a window has nothing to do with him being gay. He's terrible to his son, to everybody." 91 Gibson asserted, without evidence, that the reason Longshanks kills his son's lover is that the king is a psychopath. 92. Wallace's military campaign. MacGregor's from the next Glen joining Wallace shortly after the action at Lanark is dubious, since it is questionable whether Clan Gregor existed at that stage, and when they did emerge their traditional home was Glen Orkney, some distance from Lanark. 93. Wallace did win an important victory at the Battle of Stirling Bridge, but the version in Braveheart is highly inaccurate, as it has no bridge, or Andrew Moray, joint commander of the Scots army, who was fatally injured in the battle. Later, Wallace did carry out a large-scale raid into the north of England, but he did not get as far south as York, nor did he kill Edward I's nephew. 94. The Irish conscripts at the Battle of Falkirk are unhistorical. There were no Irish troops at Falkirk, although many of the English army were, in fact, Welsh. 95. The two-handed longswords used by Gibson in the film were not in wide use in the period. A one-handed sword and shield would have been more accurate and more efficient, since in the enemy army there were a lot of archers. 96. Better source needed. Sequel. Main article, Robert the Bruce, film. A sequel, Robert the Bruce, 2019, continues directly on from Braveheart and features Robert the Bruce, with Angus MacFadyen reprising his role from Braveheart. 97. See also Outlaw King, which depicts events that occurred immediately after the events in Braveheart. Rob Roy, a historical action drama film featuring Robert Roy McGregor, an 18th-century Scottish clan chief, also released in 1995. Patria, an independent film from Catalonia, depicting the Catalan national hero Atger Catalò's fight to liberate Catalonia from the Moors. Mel Gerard Gibson, born January 3, 1956, is an American actor and filmmaker. The recipient of multiple accolades, he is known for directing historical films as well for his action hero roles, particularly his breakout role as Max Rokitansky in the first three films of the post-apocalyptic series Mad Max, 1979-1985, and as Martin Riggs in the buddy cop series Lethal Weapon, 1987-1998. Born in Peekskill, New York, Gibson moved with his parents to Sydney, Australia, when he was 12 years old. He studied acting at the National Institute of Dramatic Art, where he starred opposite Judy Davis in a production of Romeo and Juliet. During the 1980s, he founded Icon Entertainment, a production company. Director Peter Weir cast him as one of the leads in the World War I drama Gallipoli, 1981, which earned Gibson a Best Actor award from the Australian Film Institute. In 1995, Gibson produced, directed, and starred in the war film Braveheart, for which he won the Golden Globe Award for Best Director, the Academy Award for Best Director, and the Academy Award for Best Picture. He later directed and produced The Passion of the Christ, 2004, a biblical drama that was both financially successful and highly controversial. He received further critical notice for directing the action-adventure film Apocalypto, 2006, set in Mesoamerica during the early 16th century. His notable acting roles during this period were in Ransom, 1996, Payback, 1999, What Women Want, 2000, The Patriot, 2000, and Signs, 2002. After several legal issues and controversial statements leaked to the public, Gibson's popularity in Hollywood declined, affecting his career. He subsequently starred in Edge of Darkness, 2010, and Jodie Foster's The Beaver, 2011. His directorial comeback after an absence of 10 years, Hacksaw Ridge, 2016, won 2 Academy Awards. Early life and education. Mel Gerard Gibson I was born in Peekskill, New York on January 3, 1956, into a family of Irish-American descent, as the 6th of 11 children, and the second son of Hutton Gibson, a writer, and Irish-born Anne Patricia, née Riley, died 1990. 24 Gibson's paternal grandmother was opera contralto Eva Milot, 1875-1920, who was born in Australia to Irish parents 5, while his paternal grandfather, John Hutton Gibson, was a millionaire tobacco businessman from the southern United States. 671 of Gibson's younger brothers, Donald, is also an actor. Gibson's first name is derived from St. Mel's Cathedral, situated in his mother's hometown of Longford. 8. His second name, Colmcille 9, is also shared with an Irish saint. 10. Gibson's father was awarded $145,000 in a work-related injury lawsuit against the New York Central Railroad on February 14, 1968, equivalent to $1,311,105 in 2024, and soon afterwards relocated his family to West Pymble, Sydney, Australia. 11. Gibson was 12 years old at the time. The move to his grandmother's native Australia was both financial and a way to avoid the draft of his eldest son during the Vietnam War. 12. During his high school years, Gibson was educated by members of the Congregation of Christian Brothers at St. Leo's Catholic College in Warringah, New South Wales. 13-14. Career Overview. Gibson gained favorable notices from film critics when he first entered the cinematic scene, as well as comparisons to several classic movie stars. In 1982, Vincent Canby wrote that Mr. Gibson recalls the young Steve McQueen. "I can't define star quality, but whatever it is, Mr. Gibson has it." 15. Gibson has also been likened to a combination of Clark Gable and Humphrey Bogart. 16. Gibson's roles in the Mad Max series of films, Peter Weir's Gallipoli, 1981, and the Lethal Weapon series of films earned him the label of action hero. 17. Later, Gibson expanded into human dramas such as the Franco Zeffirelli film version of Hamlet, 1990, and comedic roles such as those in Maverick, 1994, and What Women Want, 2000. He moved to directing and producing with The Man Without a Face, 1993, Braveheart, 1995, The Passion of the Christ, 2004, and Apocalypto, 2006. Jess Cagle of Time compared Gibson with Cary Grant, Sean Connery, and Robert Redford. 17. Connery once suggested Gibson should play the next James Bond to Connery's M. Gibson turned down the role, reportedly because he feared being typecast. 18. Acting. Gibson in 1985. Gibson studied at the National Institute of Dramatic Art in Sydney. 19. As students, Gibson and actress Judy Davis played the leads in Romeo and Juliet, and Gibson played the role of Queen Titania in an experimental production of A Midsummer Night's Dream. 20. After graduation in 1977. 21. Gibson immediately began work on the filming of Mad Max, but continued to work as a stage actor, and joined the State Theatre Company of South Australia in Adelaide. Gibson's theatrical credits include the character Estragon, opposite Geoffrey Rush, in Waiting for Godot, and the role of Biff Loman in a 1982 production of Death of a Salesman in Sydney. Gibson's most recent theatrical performance, opposite Sissy Spacek, was the 1993 production of Love Letters by A.R. Gurney, in Telluride, Colorado. 22. While a student at NIDA, Gibson made his film debut in the 1977 film Summer City, for which he was paid $400. 23. Gibson then played the title character in the film Mad Max, 1979. He was paid $9,000 for this role. Shortly after making the film, he did a season with the South Australian Theatre Company. During this period, he shared a $30 a week apartment in Adelaide with his future wife Robin Moore. After Mad Max, Gibson played a mentally slow youth in the film Tim, also 1979. 24. Gibson also appeared in Australian television series guest roles. He appeared in serial The Sullivans as Naval Lieutenant Ray Henderson 25 in police procedural Cop Shop 24 and in the pilot episode of Prison Serial Punishment which was produced in 1980, screened 1981. 26-27. Gibson joined the cast of the World War II action film Attack Force Z, which was not released until 1982 when Gibson had become a bigger star. Director Peter Weir cast Gibson as one of the leads in the World War I drama Gallipoli, 1981, which earned Gibson another Best Actor award from the Australian Film Institute. 28. Gallipoli also helped to earn Gibson the reputation of a serious, versatile actor and gained him the Hollywood agent Ed Limato. The sequel Mad Max 2, 1982, was his first hit in America, where it was released as The Road Warrior. Gibson again received positive notices for his role in Peter Weir's romantic thriller The Year of Living Dangerously, 1982. Following a one-year hiatus from film acting after the birth of his twin sons, Gibson took on the role of Fletcher Christian in The Bounty, 1984. Gibson earned his first $1 million salary for playing Max Rokitansky for the third time, in Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, 1985. 29-30. Gibson's first American film was Mark Rydell's drama The River, 1984, in which he and Sissy Spacek played struggling Tennessee farmers. Gibson then starred in the gothic romance Mrs. Sophie, also 1984, for Australian director Gillian Armstrong. He and Matthew Modine played condemned convict brothers opposite Diane Keaton as the warden's wife who visits them to read the Bible. In 1985, after working on 4 films in a row, Gibson took almost 2 years off at his Australian cattle station. 31 He returned to play the role of Martin Riggs in Lethal Weapon, 1987, a film which helped to cement his status as a Hollywood leading man. 32 Gibson's next film was Robert Towne's Tequila Sunrise, 1988, followed by Lethal Weapon 2, 1989. Gibson next starred in 3 films back-to-back, all released in 1990, Bird on a Wire, Air America, and Hamlet. Gibson in 1990 at an Air America premiere. During the 1990s, Gibson alternated between commercial and personal projects. His films in the first half of the decade were Forever Young, Lethal Weapon 3, Maverick, and Braveheart. He then starred in Ransom, Conspiracy Theory, Lethal Weapon 4, and Payback. Gibson also served as the speaking and singing voice of John Smith in Disney's Pocahontas. Gibson was paid a record salary of $25 million to appear in The Patriot, 2000. 33 It grossed over $100 million, as did 2 other films he featured in that year, Chicken Run and What Women Want. 17 In 2002, Gibson appeared in the Vietnam War drama We Were Soldiers in M. Night Shyamalan's Signs, which became the highest-grossing film of Gibson's acting career. 34. Gibson's popularity declined after he had made some controversial statements. 35. While promoting Signs, Gibson said that he no longer wanted to be a movie star and would only act in film again if the script were truly extraordinary. In 2010, Gibson appeared in Edge of Darkness, which marked his first starring role since 2002. 36 and was an adaptation of the BBC miniseries, Edge of Darkness. 37 In June of the same year, Gibson was in Brownsville, Texas, filming scenes for the film Get the Gringo, about a career criminal put in a tough prison in Mexico. 38. In 2010, following an outburst at his ex-girlfriend that was made public, Gibson was dropped from the talent agency of William Morris Endeavor. 39 Gibson was lined up for a small role in The Hangover Part 2, but he was removed from the film after the cast and crew objected to his involvement. 40. Gibson also played 2 villains, Luther Vaz in Machete Kills in 2013, opposite Danny Trejo, and Conrad Stonebanks in The Expendables 3 opposite Sylvester Stallone in 2014. Gibson with Expendables CO star Sylvester Stallone, background, in 2014. Gibson appeared in the lead role of director S. Craig Zahler's police brutality-themed film Dragged Across Concrete, released in 2018. 41 He then starred in The Professor and The Madman. He and the director both disowned the film. Producing. Main article, Icon Productions. After his success in Hollywood with the Lethal Weapon series, Gibson began to move into producing and directing. With partner Bruce Davey, Gibson formed Icon Productions in 1989 in order to make Hamlet. 42. In late 1996, New Zealand producer Timothy White became founding head of a CO production venture between Fox and Gibson. 43 Called Fox Icon, based at Fox Studios Australia in Sydney. The company failed to produce a single film, shutting down in December 1999. 44. Gibson has produced a number of projects for television, including a biopic on the Three Stooges and the 2008 PBS documentary Carrier. Icon has grown from being just a production company to also be an international distribution company and film exhibitor in Australia and New Zealand. 45. Gibson is credited as an executive producer of the 2023 movie Sound of Freedom, a film based on a true story which revolves around the topic of trafficking of children. 46. Directing. According to Robert Downey Jr., studio executives encouraged Gibson in 1989 to try directing, an idea he rebuffed at the time. 47 Gibson made his directorial debut in 1993 with The Man Without a Face, followed 2 years later by Braveheart, which earned Gibson the Academy Award for Best Director. Gibson had long planned to direct a remake of Fahrenheit 451, but in 1999 the project was indefinitely postponed because of scheduling conflicts. 48 Gibson was scheduled to direct Robert Downey Jr. in a Los Angeles stage production of Hamlet in January 2001, but Downey's drug relapse ended the project. 49 In 2002, while promoting We Were Soldiers and Signs to the Press, Gibson mentioned that he was planning to pare back on acting and return to directing. 50 In September 2002, Gibson announced that he would direct a film called The Passion in Aramaic and Latin with no subtitles because he hoped to transcend language barriers with filmic storytelling. 51. In 2004, he released the controversial film The Passion of the Christ, with subtitles, which he co-wrote, co-produced, and directed. The film went on to become the highest-grossing rated R film at the time with $370,782,930 in U.S. box office sales. 52 Gibson directed a few episodes of Complete Savages for the ABC network. In 2006, he directed the action-adventure film Apocalypto, his second film to feature sparse dialogue in a non-English language. The next 2 films he directed were Hacksaw Ridge, 2016, and Flight Risk, 2025. Gibson has expressed an intention to direct a movie set during the Viking Age, starring Leonardo DiCaprio. Like The Passion of the Christ and Apocalypto, he wants this speculative film to feature dialogue in period languages. 53 However, DiCaprio ultimately opted out of the project. 54 In a 2012 interview, Gibson announced that the project, which he has titled Berserker, was still moving forward. 55. In 2011, it was announced that Gibson had commissioned a screenplay from Joe Esterhaus about the Maccabees. The film is to be distributed by Warner Brothers Pictures. The announcement generated significant controversy. 56 In April 2012, Esterhaus wrote a letter to Gibson accusing him of sabotaging their film about the Maccabees because he hates Jews, and cited a series of private incidents during which he allegedly heard Gibson express extremely racist views. Although written as a private letter, it was subsequently published on a film industry website. 57 In response, Gibson stated that he still intends to make the film, but will not base it upon Esterhaus's script, which he called substandard. 58 Esterhaus then claimed his son had secretly recorded a number of Gibson's alleged hateful rants. 59 In a 2012 interview, Gibson explained that the Maccabees film was still in preparation. He explained that he was drawn to the biblical account of the uprising due to its similarity to the American Old West genre. 55. Gibson in 2007. In June 2016, Gibson announced that he will reunite with Braveheart screenwriter Randall Wallace to make a sequel for The Passion of the Christ, focusing on the resurrection of Jesus. 60 In early November 2016, Gibson revealed on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert that the sequel's title will be The Passion of the Christ, Resurrection. He also stated that the project could probably be 3 years off because it's a big subject. 61 In January 2023, it was reported that the sequel will begin filming later that year. 62 In November 2016, the film critic Matt Zoller cites named Gibson the preeminent religious filmmaker in the United States. 63. In May 2018, it was announced that Gibson would be directing a World War II film titled Destroyer. 64 Destroyer, similar to Hacksaw Ridge, will also deal with the Battle of Okinawa in the Pacific Theater, although from a different front. It will be based on the heroic story of the crew belonging to USS Laffey, DD-724, who defended their ship from 22 kamikaze attacks. In September 2018, it was announced that Gibson would direct and co-write a remake of the 1969 film, The Wild Bunch. 65 In May 2019, Deadline reported that Gibson was courting Michael Fassbender, Jamie Foxx, and Peter Dinklage to star in the project, that Jerry Bruckheimer will produce the film, and Warner Brothers will finance and release the project. 66 In 2021, after the death of the Lethal Weapon director, Richard Donner, Gibson said he would direct and star in Lethal Weapon 5. 67. Directing style. Gibson has credited his directors, particularly George Miller, Peter Weir, and Richard Donner, with teaching him the craft of filmmaking and influencing him as a director. As a director, Gibson sometimes breaks the tension on set by having his actors perform serious scenes wearing a red clown nose. 68 Helena Bonham Carter said, "He has a very basic sense of humor. It's a bit lavatorial and not very sophisticated." 69 Gibson inserted a single frame of himself smoking a cigarette into the 2005 teaser trailer of Apocalypto. 70. Film work. Main article, Mel Gibson filmography. Gibson's screen acting career began in 1976, with a role on the Australian television series The Sullivans. In his career, Gibson has appeared in 63 films, including the Mad Max and Lethal Weapon film series. In addition to acting, Gibson has also directed 6 films, including Braveheart and The Passion of the Christ, produced 11 films, and written 3 films. Films either starring or directed by Mel Gibson have earned over $2.5 billion in the United States alone. 71-72 Gibson's filmography includes television series, feature films, television films, and animated films. Mad Max series. Main article, Mad Max franchise. Gibson got his breakthrough role as the leather-clad post-apocalyptic survivor in George Miller's Mad Max. The independently financed blockbuster helped to make him an international star. In the United States, the actor's Australian accents were dubbed with American accents. 73 The original film spawned 2 sequels, Mad Max 2, known in North America as The Road Warrior, and Mad Max 3, known in North America as Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. A 4th movie, Mad Max, Fury Road, 2015, was made with Tom Hardy in the title role. 74. Gallipoli. Main article, Gallipoli, 1981 film. The 1981 Peter Weir film Gallipoli is about a group of young men from rural Western Australia who enlist in the Australian Imperial Force during World War I. They are sent to invade the Ottoman Empire, where they take part in the 1915 Gallipoli campaign. During the course of the movie, the young men slowly lose their innocence about the war. The climax of the movie centers on the catastrophic Australian offensive known as the Battle of the Neck. Peter Weir cast Gibson in the role of Frank Dunn, an Irish-Australian drifter with an intense cynicism about fighting for the British Empire. Newcomer Mark Lee was recruited to play the idealistic Archie Hamilton after participating in a photo session for the director. Gibson later recalled, "I'd auditioned for an earlier film and he told me right up front, 'I'm not going to cast you for this part. You're not old enough. But thanks for coming in, I just wanted to meet you.' He told me he wanted me for Gallipoli a couple of years later because I wasn't the archetypal Australian. He had Mark Lee, the angelic-looking, ideal Australian kid, and he wanted something of a modern sensibility. He thought the audience needed someone to relate to of their own time." 75. Gibson later said that Gallipoli is not really a war movie. That's just the backdrop. It's really the story of 2 young men. The critically acclaimed film helped to further launch Gibson's career. 76-77 He won the award for Best Actor in a Leading Role from the Australian Film Institute. 28. The Year of Living Dangerously. Main article, The Year of Living Dangerously, film. Gibson played a naive but ambitious journalist opposite Sigourney Weaver and Linda Hunt in Peter Weir's atmospheric 1982 film The Year of Living Dangerously, based on the novel of the same name by Christopher Cook. The movie was both a critical and commercial success, and the upcoming Australian actor was heavily marketed by MGM Studio. In his review of the film, Vincent Kenby of the New York Times wrote, if this film doesn't make an international star of Mr. Gibson, then nothing will. He possesses both the necessary talent and the screen presence. 78 According to John Hiscock of the Daily Telegraph, the film did, indeed, establish Gibson as an international talent. 79. Gibson was initially reluctant to accept the role of Guy Hamilton. I didn't necessarily see my role as a great challenge. My character was, like the film suggests, a puppet. And I went with that. It wasn't some star thing, even though they advertised it that way. 80 Gibson saw some similarities between himself and the character of Guy. He's not a silver-tongued devil. He's kind of immature and he has some rough edges, and I guess you could say the same for me. 16. The Bounty. Main article, The Bounty, 1984 film. Gibson followed the footsteps of Errol Flynn, Clark Gable, and Marlon Brando by starring as Fletcher Christian in a cinematic retelling of the mutiny on the Bounty. The resulting 1984 film The Bounty is considered to be the most historically accurate version. However, Gibson has expressed a belief that the film's revisionism did not go far enough. He has stated that his character should have been portrayed as the film's antagonist. He has further praised Anthony Hopkins's performance as Lieutenant William Bligh as the best aspect of the film. 80. Lethal Weapon series. Main article, Lethal Weapon, film series. Gibson moved into more mainstream commercial filmmaking with the popular action comedy film series Lethal Weapon, which began with the 1987 original. In the films he played LAPD Detective Martin Riggs, a recently widowed Vietnam veteran with a death wish and a penchant for violence and gunplay. In the films, he is partnered with a reserved family man named Roger Murtaugh, Danny Glover, and starting with the second film, they're joined by a hyperactive informant named Leo Getz, Joe Pesci. Following the success of Lethal Weapon, director Richard Donner and principal cast revisited the characters in 3 sequels, Lethal Weapon 2, 1989, Lethal Weapon 3, 1993, and Lethal Weapon 4, 1998. With its 4th installment, the Lethal Weapon series embodied the quintessence of the buddy cop pick. 81. The film series has since been rebooted with a television adaptation, which aired for 3 seasons on Fox. On November 15, 2021, Gibson confirmed that he will direct the 5th Lethal Weapon film following the death of director Richard Donner. The man who directed all the Lethal films, Richard Donner, he was a big guy. He was developing the screenplay and he got pretty far along with it. And he said to me one day, "Listen kid, if I kick the bucket you will do it." And I said, "Shut up." But he did indeed pass away. But he did ask me to do it, and at the time I didn't say anything. He said it to his wife and to the studio and the producer. "So I will be directing the 5th one," Gibson said. 82. In June 2024, Gibson confirmed in an interview with the Inspire Me podcast that he would direct the 5th installment of the Lethal Weapon franchise and that the film would stay true to Donner's vision and influence. 83-84 Gibson also stated that he and Glover would return to play their respective roles of Riggs and Murtaugh. 85. Hamlet. Main article, Hamlet, 1990 film. Gibson made the unusual transition from action to classical drama, playing William Shakespeare's Danish prince in Franco Zeffirelli's Hamlet. Gibson was cast alongside experienced Shakespearean actors Ian Holm, Alan Bates, and Paul Scofield. He compared working with Scofield to being thrown into the ring with Mike Tyson. 86 Scofield said of Gibson, "Not the sort of actor you'd think would make an ideal Hamlet, but he had enormous integrity and intelligence." 87. Braveheart. Main article, Braveheart. Gibson, right, on the set of Braveheart. In 1995, Gibson directed, produced, and starred in Braveheart, a biographical film of Sir William Wallace, a Scottish patriot and resistance fighter who was executed in 1305 for high treason against King Edward I of England. Gibson received 2 Academy Awards, Best Director and Best Picture, for his second directorial effort. In winning the Academy Award for Best Director, Gibson became only the sixth actor-turned-filmmaker to do so. 88 Braveheart helped to revive the film genre of the historical epic. The Battle of Stirling Bridge sequence is considered by critics to be one of the all-time best-directed battle scenes. 89. The film's depiction of the Prince of Wales as an effeminate homosexual caused the film to be attacked by Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation, GLAAD, which was especially enraged by a scene in which King Edward I murders his son's male lover by throwing him out of a castle window. 90. Gibson, who had previously been reported making several homophobic statements 91 now replied, "The fact that King Edward throws this character out a window has nothing to do with him being gay. He's terrible to his son, to everybody." 90. Gibson asserted that the reason that King Edward I kills his son's lover is because the king is a psychopath. 92. Gibson also expressed bewilderment that some film-goers laughed at this murder. "We cut a scene out, unfortunately, where you really got to know that character, Edward II, and to understand his plight and his pain. But it just stopped the film in the first act so much that you thought, when's this story going to start?" 93. The Passion of the Christ. Main article, The Passion of the Christ. Gibson directed, produced, co-wrote, and funded the film The Passion of the Christ, 2004, which chronicled the passion and death of Jesus, Jim Caviezel. The film was shot exclusively in Aramaic, Latin, and Hebrew. Gibson originally intended to release the film without subtitles, but eventually relented for theatrical exhibition. The film sparked divergent reviews, ranging from high praise to criticism of the violence. The Anti-Defamation League accused Gibson of anti-Semitism over the film's unflattering depiction of Caiaphas and the Sanhedrin. In The Nation, reviewer Kotha Pollitt wrote, "Gibson has violated just about every precept of the conference's own 1988 criteria for the portrayal of Jews in dramatizations of the Passion: no bloodthirsty Jews, no rabble, no use of scripture that reinforces negative stereotypes of Jews, etc. The priests have big noses and gnarly faces, lumpish bodies, yellow teeth. Herod Antipas and his court are a bizarre collection of oily-haired, epicene perverts. The good Jews look like Italian movie stars. Magdalene actually is an Italian movie star. The lovely Monica Bellucci, Mary, who would have been around 50 and appeared 70, could pass for a ripe 35. 94. Among those to defend Gibson were Orthodox Jewish Rabbi Daniel Lapin and radio personality Michael Medved. 95. Referring to ADL National Director Abraham Foxman, Rabbi Lapin said that by calling the Passion of the Christ anti-Semitic, what he is saying is that the only way, for Christians, to escape the wrath of Foxman is to repudiate their own faith. 95. In an interview with the Globe and Mail, Gibson stated, "If anyone has distorted gospel passages to rationalize cruelty towards Jews or anyone, it's in defiance of repeated papal condemnation. The papacy has condemned racism in any form. Jesus died for the sins of all times, and I'll be the first on the line for culpability." 96. Eventually, the continued media attacks began to anger Gibson. After Hutton Gibson's Holocaust denial was used to attack his son's film in print by the New York Times writer Frank Rich 97, an enraged Mel Gibson retorted, "I want to kill him. I want his intestines on a stick. I want to kill his dog." 98-99. Gibson's traditionalist Catholic upbringing was also the target of criticism. In a 2006 interview with Diane Sawyer, Gibson stated that he feels that his human rights were violated by the often vitriolic attacks on his person, his family, and his religious beliefs which were sparked by the Passion. 100. The film grossed $611,899,420 worldwide and $370,782,930 in the US alone. 101, surpassing any motion picture starring Gibson. 102 in US box offices, it became the 7th highest grossing, at the time, film in history. 103 and the highest grossing R-rated film of all time. 104 the film was nominated for 3 Academy Awards. 105 and won the People's Choice Award for Favorite Dramatic Motion Picture. 106. Apocalypto. Main article, Apocalypto. Gibson received further critical acclaim for his directing of the 2006 action-adventure film Apocalypto. 107. Gibson's fourth directorial effort is set in Mesoamerica during the early 16th century against the turbulent end times of a Maya civilization. The sparse dialogue is spoken in the Yucatec Maya language by a cast of Native American descent. 108-109. Gibson himself has stated that the film is an attempt at making a deliberate point about great civilizations and what causes them to decline and disintegrate. Gibson said, "People think that modern man is so enlightened, but we're susceptible to the same forces and we are also capable of the same heroism and transcendence." 110-111. This theme is further explored by a quote from Will Durant, which is superimposed at the very beginning of the film: "A great civilization is not conquered from without until it has destroyed itself from within." The Beaver. Gibson with Jodie Foster at the premiere of The Beaver at the 2011 Cannes Film Festival. Gibson starred in The Beaver, a domestic drama about a depressed alcoholic directed by former Maverick co-star Jodie Foster. 112. The Beaver premiered at the South by Southwest Festival in Austin, Texas on March 16, 2011. The opening weekend in 22 theaters was considered a flop. It made $104,000, which comes to a per-theater average of $4,745. 113. The film's distributor, Summit Entertainment, had originally planned for a wide release of The Beaver for the weekend of May 20, but after the initial box office returns for the film, the company changed course and decided instead to give the film a limited art house run. 114. Michael Ciopley of the New York Times observed on June 5, 2011, that the film had cleared just about $1 million, making it a certified flop. 115. Director Jodie Foster opined that the film did not do well with American audiences because it was a dramedy, and very often Americans are not comfortable with that. 116. Before its release, much of the coverage focused on the unavoidable association between the protagonist's issues and Mel Gibson's own well-publicized personal and legal problems. See alcohol abuse and legal issues, including a conviction of battery of his ex-girlfriend. 117. wrote Time magazine, The Beaver is a somber, sad domestic drama featuring an alcoholic in acute crisis. It's hard to separate Gibson's true life story from what's happening on screen. 118. Hacksaw Ridge. In 2014, Gibson signed on to direct Hacksaw Ridge, a World War II drama based on the true story of conscientious objector Desmond T. Doss, played by Andrew Garfield. 119. The film premiered at the 73rd Venice Film Festival in September 2016. 120 and received what the New Zealand Herald called rave reviews. 121-122. It won or was nominated for many awards, including Golden Globe nominations for Best Picture, Best Director for Gibson, and Best Actor for Garfield. Hacksaw Ridge was also nominated for an Academy Award for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Sound Editing, Best Sound Mixing, and Best Film Editing. 123, 124, 125, 126. The film grossed $164 million worldwide, 4 times its production costs. 127. Flight Risk. In May 2023, it was announced that Gibson would direct a film titled Flight Risk, starring Mark Wahlberg. Set to be released by Lionsgate, the film will star Wahlberg as a pilot transporting a dangerous criminal for trial. 128. It was later reported that the film had begun shooting in Las Vegas on June 16. Filming was reportedly unaffected by the SAG-AFTRA strike, having been exempted as an independent project. 129. Flight Risk was released in the United States on January 24, 2025. 130. Personal life. Because of his mother, Gibson retains dual Irish and American citizenship. 131. He is also an Australian permanent resident. 132, 133, 134, 135. Relationships. Robin Denise Moore. Gibson and Moore at the 60th Academy Awards in 1988. Gibson met Robin Denise Moore in 1977, 136 soon after filming Mad Max, in Adelaide, South Australia. At the time, Robin was a dental nurse and Mel was an unknown actor working for the South Australian Theatre Company. 137 On June 7, 1980, Mel and Robin were married in a Catholic church in Forestville, New South Wales. 138 They have one daughter, Hannah, b. 1980, married Kenny Wayne Shepherd in 2006, and 6 sons, twins Edward and Christian, b. 1982, William, b. 1985, Louis, b. 1988, Milo, b. 1990, and Thomas, b. 1999, and 7 grandchildren as of 2024. 139 140. After 26 years of marriage, Gibson and Robin separated on July 29, 2006. 141 142 In a 2011 interview, Gibson stated that the separation began the day following his arrest for drunk driving in Malibu. 143 Robin Gibson filed for divorce on April 13, 2009, citing irreconcilable differences. In a joint statement, the Gibsons declared, "Throughout our marriage and separation we have always striven to maintain the privacy and integrity of our family and will continue to do so." 9 The divorce filing followed the March 2009 release of photographs appearing to show him on a beach embracing his live-in girlfriend of 1 year, Russian songwriter and pianist Oksana Grigoryeva. 144 145. The Gibsons' divorce was finalized on December 23, 2011, and the settlement with his ex-wife was said to be the highest in Hollywood history at over $400 million. 146 The couple reportedly did not have a prenuptial agreement, because California is a community property state. 147 Robin Gibson received half of everything her husband had earned during their marriage. 146. Oksana Grigoryeva. In a 2010 interview, Grigoryeva stated that, when she first began being wooed by Gibson, she was surprised and only accepted his advances after learning that the actor-director and his wife had been separated for more than 18 months. Grigoryeva added, "He wrote me a lot of poetry. It was very beautiful, impressionistic, like an edgy, modern iambic pentameter. Mel has a really good grasp of language, he's fantastic with words." 148. On April 28, 2009, Gibson made a red carpet appearance with Grigoryeva. She had previously had a son with actor Timothy Dalton. 149 and gave birth to Gibson's daughter Lucia on October 30, 2009. 150 151 152 By April 2010, Gibson and Grigoryeva had split. 153 On June 21, 2010, Grigoryeva filed a restraining order against Gibson to keep him away from her and their child. The restraining order was modified the next day regarding Gibson's contact with their child. 154 Gibson obtained a restraining order against Grigoryeva on June 25, 2010. 154 155. Gibson's 2011 mugshot from booking with El Segundo Police Department. 156. Grigoryeva accused Gibson of domestic violence, leading to an investigation by the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department in July 2010. 157 158 On July 9, 2010, some audio recordings of a rant, allegedly directed by Gibson toward Grigoryeva, were posted on the internet. 159 The same day Gibson was dropped by his agency, William Morris Endeavor. 159 Gibson's estranged wife Robin filed a court statement declaring that she never experienced any abuse from Gibson. 160 While forensic experts have questioned the validity of some of the tapes, Gibson himself did not deny they were accurate at the time. 161 In March 2011, Mel Gibson agreed to plead no contest to a misdemeanor battery charge. 162 In April 2011, Gibson finally broke his silence about the incident in question. In an interview with Deadline Hollywood, Gibson expressed gratitude to longtime friends Whoopi Goldberg and Jodie Foster, both of whom had spoken publicly in his defense. About the recordings, Gibson said, "I've never treated anyone badly or in a discriminatory way based on their gender, race, religion, or sexuality. I don't blame some people for thinking that though, from the garbage they heard on those leaked tapes, which have been edited. You have to put it all in the proper context of being in an irrationally heated discussion at the height of a breakdown, trying to get out of a really unhealthy relationship. It's one terribly awful moment in time," said to one person, "in the span of one day and doesn't represent what I truly believe or how I've treated people my entire life." 143. In the same interview, Gibson stated, "I was allowed to end the case and still maintain my innocence. It's called a West plea 163 and it's not something that prosecutors normally allow. But in my case, the prosecutors and the judge agreed that it was the right thing to do. I could have continued to fight this for years and it probably would have come out fine. But I ended it for my children and my family. This was going to be such a circus. You don't drag other people in your life through the sewer needlessly, so I'll take the hit and move on." 143. In August 2011, Gibson settled with Grigory Va, who was awarded $750,000, joint legal custody, and a house in Sherman Oaks, California until their daughter Lucia turns 18. In 2013, Grigory Va sued her attorneys, accusing them of advising her to sign a bad agreement, including a term that taking legal action against Gibson would compromise her financial settlement. 164. Rosalind Ross. As of 2014, Gibson is in a relationship with former champion equestrian vaulter and writer Rosalind Ross. 165-166 Ross gave birth to their son, and Gibson's ninth child, Lars Gerard, on January 20, 2017, in Los Angeles. 167. Investments. Gibson is a property investor, with multiple properties in Malibu, California, several locations in Costa Rica, a private island in Fiji, and properties in Australia. 168-169 In December 2004, Gibson sold his 300 acres, 1.2 square kilometers, Australian farm in the Kiwa Valley for $6 million. Clarification needed. 170 Also in December 2004, Gibson purchased Mago Island in Fiji from Tokyu Corporation of Japan for $15 million. Descendants of the original native inhabitants of Mago, who were displaced in the 1860s, have protested the purchase. Gibson stated it was his intention to retain the pristine environment of the undeveloped island. 171. In early 2005, he sold his 45,000 acres, 180 square kilometers, Montana ranch to a neighbor. 172 In April 2007, he purchased a 400 acres, 1.6 square kilometers, ranch in Costa Rica for $26 million, and, in July 2007, he sold his 76 acres, 31 ha, Tudor estate in Connecticut, which he purchased in 1994 for $9 million, for $40 million to an unnamed buyer. 173 Also that month, he sold a Malibu property for $30 million that he had purchased for $24 million 2 years before. 174. In 2008, he purchased the Malibu home of actors David Duchovny and Tia Leone. 175. In 2009 he bought a house in Sherman Oaks, Los Angeles, built in 2006 to designs inspired by architect Frank Lloyd Wright. He paid $2.4 million for the property, which he bought under a trust, with Vicki Lynn Christensen, co of his production company Icon Productions, as trustee. He sold the property at a loss in February, for $2.1 million. 176. Jersey leaks. Records of Gibson using offshore accounts and business were revealed in the Jersey leaks. Records of more than 20,000 individuals held with the wealth management firm Klein Ward Benson. 177. Philanthropy. Gibson at the Christmas party for charity Mending Kids International in 2007. His former wife Robin was president of the charity. Gibson and his former wife have contributed a substantial amount of money to various charities, one of which is Healing the Children. According to Chris Embleton, one of the founders, the Gibsons gave millions to provide life-saving medical treatment to needy children worldwide. 178-179 They also supported the restoration of Renaissance artwork 180 and gave millions of dollars to NIDA. 181. Gibson donated $500,000 to the El Mirador Basin Project to protect the last tract of virgin rainforest in Central America and to fund archaeological excavations in the cradle of Mayan civilization. 182 In July 2007, Gibson again visited Central America to make arrangements for donations to the indigenous population. Gibson met with Costa Rican President Oscar Arias to discuss how to channel the funds. 183 During the same month, Gibson pledged to give financial assistance to a Malaysian company named Green Rubber Global for a tire recycling factory located in Gallup, New Mexico. 184 While on a business trip to Singapore in September 2007, Gibson donated to a local charity for children with chronic and terminal illnesses. 185 Gibson is also a supporter of Angels at Risk, a non-profit organization focusing on education about drug and alcohol abuse among teens. 186. In a 2011 interview, Gibson said of his philanthropic works, "It gives you perspective. It's one of my faults, you tend to focus on yourself a lot. Which is not always the healthiest thing for your psyche or anything else. If you take a little time out to think about other people, it's good. It's uplifting." 187. Religion and politics. Faith. Gibson was raised a Sedevacantist traditionalist Catholic, who reject the validity of all popes since the Second Vatican Council and hold that the Holy See is currently vacant. 12. His father Hutton Gibson was an ardent Sedevacantist and a Holocaust denier who held strong anti-Semitic views and supported various conspiracy theories. 188. During the filming of The Passion of the Christ, he had daily visits from both local priests and priests from the Traditionalist Institute of Christ the King, a non-Sedevacantist group in full communion with the Pope, in France. 189. When asked about the Catholic doctrine of extra ecclesiam nulla salus, Gibson replied, "There is no salvation for those outside the church. I believe it. Put it this way. My wife is a saint. She's a much better person than I am. Honestly. She's Episcopalian, Church of England. She prays, she believes in God, she knows Jesus, she believes in that stuff. And it's just not fair if she doesn't make it, she's better than I am. But that is a pronouncement from the chair. I go with it." 98-190 When he was asked whether John 14:6 is an intolerant position, he said that through the merits of Jesus' sacrifice, even people who don't know Jesus are able to be saved, but through him. 191 Gibson has told Diane Sawyer that he believes non-Catholics and non-Christians can go to heaven. 192. Gibson's acquaintance Father William Fulco said in 2009 that Gibson denies neither the Pope nor Vatican II. Even so, as of 2021, Gibson attended the Church of the Holy Family, a traditionalist church he founded and funds in Southern California. 193. In a 1990 interview with Barbara Walters, Gibson said, "God is the only one who knows how many children we should have, and we should be ready to accept them. One can't decide for oneself who comes into this world and who doesn't. That decision doesn't belong to us." 194. Gibson, in a letter published by Italian traditionalist Catholic author Aldo Maria Valli, on his website, on July 6, 2024, stated his full support for the recently excommunicated Italian Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano, who he praised as a modern-day Athanasius, stating that he agreed with him in considering that the post-conciliar Church of Vatican II is a counterfeit church, and that being called a schismatic and being excommunicated by Jorge Bergoglio is like a badge of honor when you consider he is a total apostate and expels you from a false institution. He also stated that I am with you and I hope Bergoglio excommunicates me from his false church also. 195. Politics. In a July 1995 interview with Playboy, Gibson said President Bill Clinton was a low-level opportunist and someone was telling him what to do. He said that the Rhodes Scholarship was established for young men and women who want to strive for a new world order, and this was a campaign for Marxism. 196. Gibson later backed away from such conspiracy theories, saying, "It was like, hey, tell us a conspiracy, so I laid out this thing, and suddenly, it was like I was talking the gospel truth, espousing all this political shit like I believed in it." 197. In the same 1995 Playboy interview, Gibson argued against ordaining women to the priesthood. 198. In 2004, he publicly spoke out against taxpayer-funded embryonic stem cell research that involves the cloning and destruction of human embryos. 199. In March 2005, he condemned the outcome of the Terry Schiavo case, referring to Schiavo's death as state-sanctioned murder. 200. Gibson questioned the Iraq War in March 2004. 201. In 2006, Gibson said that the fear-mongering depicted in his film Apocalypto reminds me a little of President Bush and his guys. 202. He later said in 2016 that he is anti-war but has an appreciation for the sacrifices made by warriors. 203. Gibson complimented filmmaker Michael Moore in his documentary Fahrenheit 9/11 when he and Moore were recognized at the 2005 People's Choice Awards. 204. Gibson's Icon Productions originally agreed to finance Moore's film but later sold the rights to Miramax Films. Moore said that his agent Ari Emanuel claimed that top Republicans called Gibson to tell him, "Don't expect to get more invitations to the White House." 205. Icon's spokesman dismissed this story, saying, "We never run from a controversy. You'd have to be out of your mind to think that of the company that just put out The Passion of the Christ." 206. In a 2011 interview, Gibson stated, "The whole notion of politics is they always present you with this or this or this. I'll get a newspaper to read between the lines. Why do you have to adhere to prescribed formulas that they have and people argue over them and they're all in a box? And you watch Fox claw CNN, and CNN claw Fox. Sometimes I catch a piece of the news and it seems insanity to me. I quietly support candidates. I'm not out there banging a drum for candidates. But I have supported a candidate and it's a whole other world. Once you've been exposed to it, once or twice or however many times, if you know the facts and see how they're presented, it's mind-boggling. It's a very scary arena to be in, but I do vote. I go in there and pull the lever. It's kind of like pulling the lever and watching the trap door fall out from beneath you. Why should we trust any of these people? None of them ever deliver on anything. It's always disappointing." 143. Gibson revealed in a 2016 interview with Jorge Ramos that he voted for neither Donald Trump nor Hillary Clinton in the 2016 United States presidential election. 207. In July 2021, Gibson was recorded saluting Trump while attending UFC 264, which went viral over the internet. 208. 209. 210. In October 2020, Gibson released a statement regarding the Second Nagorno-Karabakh War and expressing solidarity with the Armenian people. 211. Gibson endorsed Trump in the 2024 United States presidential election, adding that Kamala Harris had the IQ of a fence post. 212. On January 16, 2025, it was announced by President-elect Donald Trump that Gibson would serve in a new role as one of 3 special ambassadors to Hollywood, sharing the role with fellow actors Jon Voight and Sylvester Stallone. Trump stated that he wants these actors to make Hollywood stronger than ever before by bringing back business lost to foreign countries. 213 Trump said that the three would be his eyes and ears and he would act on their suggestions, but their duties were not specified. 214. Alcohol abuse and legal issues. Gibson has said that he started drinking at the age of 13. 215 In a 2002 interview for the documentary ACTINGCLASSOF1977.com, made by his former National Institute of Dramatic Art colleague Sally Mackenzie, Gibson said, "I had really good highs but some very low lows." 216. Gibson was banned from driving in Ontario, Canada, for 3 months in 1984, after rear-ending a car in Toronto while under the influence of alcohol. 217 He retreated to his Australian farm for over a year to recover, but he continued to struggle with drinking. Despite this problem, Gibson gained a reputation in Hollywood for professionalism and punctuality such that frequent collaborator Richard Donner was shocked when Gibson confided that he was drinking 5 pints of beer for breakfast. 100 Reflecting in 2003 and 2004, Gibson said that despair in his mid-30s led him to contemplate suicide, and he meditated on Christ's passion to heal his wounds. 100 190 218 He took more time off acting in 1991 and sought professional help. 219 That year, Gibson's attorneys were unsuccessful at blocking the Sunday Mirror from publishing what Gibson shared at AA meetings. 220 In 1992, Gibson provided financial support to Hollywood's Recovery Center, saying, "Alcoholism is something that runs in my family. It's something that's close to me. People do come back from it, and it's a miracle." 221. On August 17, 2006,